Welcome, these will be my thoughts on Arrow since 3 episode 14, The Return. The episode is rated TV-14, so this video B. There will be spoilers for the Arrowverse leading up to, including this episode. And yeah, another episode that I absolutely loved. Right, we are going to start with some recommendations for YouTube videos. So, I'm gonna start with the Illuminati pop video, Why Everyone Missed the Point of Mother Mary, Tool Times, One More Endless War, Legion Millers is the U.S. in its French Revolution era, Modern Girls, The Devil Wears Prada 2, Flop or Not, and the Nando Cuts What's Next for the Daredevil characters. So, I'm gonna try to keep this chronological, but I really have to say, it is so freaking cool to have Deathstroke back, if even just for the one episode. And it's one of those things, you gotta be careful if you're gonna bring back, he was like the central villain of season 2. So you gotta be really careful to not like undermine that by having him return and be defeated within an episode. But they are using him in a really compelling way. He is still very much engaged in this whole vendetta of trying to destroy, Oliver and also Thea and the Queen family, destroying them the way he felt his was destroyed by Oliver. I mean, I appreciate his life was destroyed, but saying that Oliver was the driving force behind that is a little, yeah. But and they use him to bring Thea up to speed on Sarah, the Sarah side of it all. And yeah, that is very like effective drama. And I'm also, yeah, we're at a new stage of the relationship between her and Malcolm. Like, she used to, have issues with him, but yeah, this is a new level. So, I think the very first thing we see in this episode might be one of the flashbacks. Let's go with that at least. So, yeah, we have the... Oh, wait, no. Now that it's some of the training, and it's super cool seeing the two. You know what? From now on, if there's an episode where Thea is engaging in some kind of action scene, please just assume that I love it. Like, I will let you know if there ever is one that I think, that could have been better. Like, it's just so freaking cool seeing, yeah. And, you know, one of those wonderful bits of cinematic shorthand. We don't need to see them hunt and kill an animal. We just see animal over the fire, pan up, she's eating some sort of meat, and yeah, he tells her that if she knew what animal it was, she might not eat it, which understandably makes her stop eating. But I do really want there to be an outtake where, so she's sitting there, she's nibbling just a tiny little bit at this piece of meat, and then she asks, "What is this?" I just want there to be an outtake where Oliver responds. I don't know if there's a specific term for it, but it is this running thing of some productions of shows and movies and such will have actors just take the tiniest little teensy beatsy bites so that they can do a lot of takes without the actor having to eat a lot or without having to replace the stuff that they're eating. And yeah, the I believe it's already at this point that we're setting up that there's some that's when she says it's like there are no secrets between us anymore. And he's like, it sure is like that, yeah. Not verbally, but like his eyes are, yeah. And I think that is when we get the flashback. So yeah, we have the thing about, the only reason that Waller did not take out these two is, Maseo has at this point shown he's good at keeping Oliver. So some of the others who've tried to control Oliver doesn't go well. And Oliver, because he can access the system at Queen's Consolidated, and that is genuinely very clever because, like, yeah, we already know that is a really that it's you know that's not a system that you very easily access. So obviously, if they're gonna do even one episode, which it looks like it may. Actually, yeah, I guess by the end of this, I'm not sure if this is the only episode where he was back in the city, but yeah, I yeah, you're gonna have to really work to explain it, and this does explain the line he had to dig, which they helpfully put in the previously on about wasn't on the island that he found the file, and I think that is yeah. Ultimately, Kelly Hu, not a huge amount of screen time, and yet she's so utterly incredible that even with that little, like, holy crap, when there was the bit about the auction is happening and then there's a bunch of shooting, as soon as the last gunshot has been fired, she just goes, so 60 million, do we have higher than 60 million? Yeah, just stone cold awesome. So I did recently rewatch X-Men 2. I might actually think she's even cooler in the Arrowverse than in that movie, and I don't think I have to tell you that is very high praise. That's yeah. I think that might actually have been the movie that started me being a fan of hers at all, and I think it was for a number of people. I think that was one of her like big breaks, at least in America. I forget if she worked elsewhere first. Anyway, I think that does bring us back to so yeah. Back in the present day, I also really loved how much of this episode, like the present day stuff, is almost all on the Purgatory Island. Yeah, just that worked really well. We feel the isolation that the two siblings do, and they still manage to do a bunch of other character stuff. It's just mostly the flashbacks. But yeah, so he's dreaming about Sarah, and she wakes him up, and we again have this thing about, like, what is he, is he's trying to keep the truth from her, and then he goes to the cell and finds out, yeah, no incel in a cell in this case, which yeah, really, really nicely done. And the thing about, at first it's just like basically whoever's on that, find out it's a guard, is almost entirely covered, so we can't quite see. But then we see, oh, the door's been opened, and off comes the cover. It was the guard, and he did say, "We both know this prisoner won't keep me forever, Charles. I mean Oliver. Thankfully, Oliver will always be there, old frenemy." And I think that pretty much. Let's see. Yeah, and so yeah, he goes running back, and yeah, not long after, we get the reveal that it was indeed Malcolm, and that's, yeah, holy crap! I'm so glad that he's still, yeah, they're really getting a lot of mileage out of Malcolm. It's yeah, this feels completely in line with his characterization up to this point. And let's see. I think that pretty much. Yeah, right. And at this point, Thea basically can't even believe this about Malcolm. And then by the end of the episode, there's no. Yeah. What was her line? I will never again be your daughter. And I think the next day, yeah, I believe that's when we get another of the flashbacks, and the let's see. I thought it really worked that he was able to check in on, you know, yeah, both Thea and Tommy. And we also got a tiny bit of Dig. And they even fit Felicity in there. And this somehow they managed to not make it feel like, well, the contract says they have to be in every single episode, which I wouldn't actually rule out. That might literally be why they all make appearances, but I felt like it worked. I mean, Dig was already working rich douche security before the pilot, and it was very cool. It wasn't a huge amount of it, but him and his brother was good. And let's see. I think we have the yeah. It helps us really appreciate how much Thea has grown, seeing her, in this flashback back then, and yeah, she's at the grave, and then we find out she's scoring, which, yeah, what a bittersweet scene, because like at first it just, we already knew that she would sometimes go to the grave and talk to the, but we did also know about the, you know, substance abuse problem, and yeah, it was, and Tommy, trying to help, trying to be the bigger brother, and the line about, yeah, you're not my brother. Well, about that. And yeah, he says, the party's 21 and over, and she says, we both know there's gonna be under 21s at this party. And yeah, he says she cannot show up, which at this point in her, arc, pretty much guarantees she will. I think this might also be around where we get the bit with the... Right, also, yeah, appreciated that Oliver has to overhear these things. Really good ears on him, but then that is the thing in productions like this, we obviously, for the drama, we need him to overhear what is said. And yeah, at this point, she feels like he wasn't really there for her. I also wanted to briefly acknowledge, I think this is the first time they've retconned. So in the, I actually forget if it was in the pilot or the second episode, but one of the first episodes of the first season, it looks like that's when Oliver learns that she has a drug problem. And I suppose one way one could interpret it from this episode is maybe there's a while and he thought she had conquered it on her own. But thinking back on his performance, I think it works as just he's trying to hide that he did already know, because as far as she knows, he didn't. And let's see, because like at the time I just thought it was him like working hard to keep secrets from her for obvious reasons, and yeah, I could see how that could be one of the secrets that he's keeping from her right there. Yeah, Laurel finding Quentin in a bar, and yeah, those lines about, is there even one bartender in the entire city who doesn't know about Sarah? And then he says, well, some of us do still have to grieve, just wow. Very big of her to say, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that, something like that. And yeah, the bartender cuts him off. The drink, not like with a knife. And that's also, I think I may have said it before, though I forget if it was about this actor, but yeah, various actors on the show do a really, really great job acting like they're under the influence or desperate to be, like maybe going through withdrawal, these sorts of things. Because these are things that can sometimes lead to overacting, and that just, ends up kind of awkward, both for them to play and us to watch. I don't think there's been a bad one on the show, on in the Arrowverse so far. Now, yeah, the next thing I think is when the yeah, I think that's when the chase is oh wait, well, let's see. I guess this is when he puts them in the cell, actually. Yeah. And yeah, you know, so much effective drama here. You know, he killed their mother and he wants them to suffer over Shadow, and his urge for revenge overshadows Shadow, and he says the killer line, "You like your secrets." And as Thea notes later, she noticed his reaction to that, because that was not just, like, yeah, clearly he's worried she'll realize the truth. And the fact that she can now, because like there was a while where it was clear that she could tell he was lying about something, but it was like, well, that's Oliver, even if, like, he may have changed from 5 years on the island. That was back when we thought he was consistently on the NU for 5 years. But some things never do change, do they? But now, he has shared a number of secrets with her, and so it hurts that he's still holding some back, and that, yeah. Let's see. So I think the next thing might be the flashback to the party, and let's see. So there's a bunch of things to go over here. So I quite liked Maseo pointing out, this is a terrible disguise. I don't know. I mean, it worked for a while on the show in the main timeline, but yeah, he's trying to avoid being recognized. Then we have, I can't believe who's here, Queen, and for like a fraction of a second, we're like, oh no, but it's the other Queen. And yeah, the thing about, he's I'm not going to repeat it, don't worry, but Tommy's line and Laurel saying, "Are you still using that line?" Yeah, that will kill the vibe for this other woman to hear. Oh, he uses that all the time. And yeah, he does really try to get Thea away from this, but yeah, and then the dealer shows up and he tries, that's also a whole thing. And ultimately Oliver goes up to him and, of course, does not cover his face, which also, this helps explain why he takes efforts to, back in the main timeline, he would either kill people who found out his secret, or he would take really great care to hide, because he was immediately recognized. And yeah, great acting on the face as he does kill this guy and then throw him off. At first I was a tiny bit worried, are they really going to pretend like, oh, just looks like he fell? No, they are saying it was definitely a homicide, but it's like, I mean, nobody saw, it was just someone in a hoodie, I don't know. So it's just an unsolved murder, and I don't think Quentin is like losing that much sleep over this scummy drug dealer. So and yeah, we even have the line about, maybe it's a vigilante. And oh, actually, yeah, come to think of it, it wasn't yeah, okay, yeah, some of this is definitely out of order. Anyway, I think the next thing might be the yeah, so he does, she says, what did he mean about secrets? And he's like, how about, I think I would literally rather physically injure you than tell you the secret. In his defense, it helps them escape. and yeah, that was also, and the fact that she does agree to it and readily as well, like yeah, Thea has really changed. I mean, she literally used to do drugs in part to escape emotional pain, and now when she's told, oh, there's going to be physical pain, she's like, go ahead, as long as it serves a purpose, obviously. And good sound work on that as well. Like, oof, that sounded like it hurt. Which is, of course, also like ultimately, they really only have the sound design and the acting of both of them, because like, the even if like hypothetically, like if this was like R-rated, maybe they would have like a practical effect, but it's not. So there's only so much you really can show, and yeah. Back in the flashback, I did really appreciate Tommy, saying, "Hey, I invited her. Take it up with my lawyer, buddy." And because this could really get her in a lot of trouble. So that is part of how she did not have a criminal record at the start of the show. Actually, wait, would this get her a criminal record? It would definitely get her in trouble. And let's see, yeah. The thing about, like, well, what about, did you invite the drug dealer? No, but there were some crashers. I see that, Laurel. And yeah, the thing about, confronting her and saying, so you're going to take this, job when you could be saving people. And yeah. And she points out, you're only embarrassing yourself. And yeah, this was back when he was a more or less functioning alcoholic. She points out that he's, what was the line? Something about like, you're awful high and mighty for someone who's this lit. And I think that might just about, yeah. And so Maseo brings him back, and this time, gun in hand, poked it back, because like obviously he's no longer listening to mere words. There has to be more. Yeah, we also have the bit where he goes into QC and accesses the computer. And yeah, clever about, why wouldn't they remove my login? Well, why would they? They think you're dead. I mean, that's just pointless work. Like, why bother? And he finds the video and later watches it. And it was fun seeing, back then Felicity, because like, she hasn't really said something particularly embarrassing in a while. She's been very confident recently. Part of it was the trial by fire of making things work without Oliver there for the vigilantism. Yeah, I really love the way that they are growing these characters, and yeah. And, the actress slots, Emily Bett Rickards, I believe is her name, slots perfectly back into embarrassing Felicity, who's embarrassing herself in front of Oliver even when she doesn't know he's there. And I guess, because yeah, like, I would say recently she's been about as confident as she was back in the other flashback, the origin story for her. Yeah, back when she was a hacker in college, which, we can understand why she was somewhat nervous after that whole thing, because she thought she made a mistake back then. And yeah, I think that does pretty much. Yeah, so they back in the present day, they escape from the right. The video message was also really great. I've probably mentioned it before because I feel like we've seen the picture before, but I do really appreciate, like, the actor does a fantastic job on the face for that still photo that Felicity reacts to. Back then Oliver did just really look like just the most obnoxious jerk in the world. And let's see, I think Huh. Yeah, I think that does bring us to, so they, yeah, the two of them are running across the island, and the trap, and she's like, who would set that? And he's like, I did. And yeah, it is absolutely true. He really does have to rest. This is he might pass out if he exerts himself too much after that. Love that we see not just blood but flesh. Like, that thing did not just poke a tiny little hole and there's a couple of drops of blood. No, it tore some flesh, and it's visible on the outside of the jacket. That, yeah, because you got to sell it, because it's like, when does Oliver slow down? But this would do it. And she points out, you keep evading, and he tells the truth. And wonderfully soap opera-y. He first he says Malcolm killed, and she's like, no, Coro Maltese. And he's like, he didn't do it directly. He used someone, and she doesn't remember what she did, or somehow my birthday, even though it's, never mind. And she immediately understands who she is. And yeah, as expected, it did indeed really, really mess with her. And love the line later, you don't have your brother's killer instinct. I wish that were true. And I think the right, also love that I didn't even realize that it was set up for this kind of payoff, but Malcolm did say in an earlier episode, I thought it was just like he's saying, listen, you don't have secrets from me, Oliver. But yeah, he said, I know about your little prison on the NU. I mean, maybe even at that time, he was thinking, like, I mean, this would do it. Because, like, if Slade gets out, he's going to do what he can to kill Oliver and Thea, if that's, and yeah, Malcolm actually sent his own daughter there, knowing that there's some percentage chance that they fail and Slade kills them. And yeah. And he didn't even warn them. Like, what if Oliver hadn't gone to Slade for a little while? Like, holy crap. But once again, that is Malcolm, And I feel like the next thing in the flashbacks, so they talk about how they have to stop Shin Na Wen, and the let's see, so at first, Oliver is not back at base, and he does show up just in time. And I suppose if I had one criticism of this episode, it did feel a tiny bit like plot armory. That I don't know. I mean, I guess they just didn't feel the need to shoot Maseo, maybe, but they shoot literally everyone else there, and the red shirts. And I do also, I mean, technically they did have, which also, like, I guess Maseo really is in the doghouse with Waller. He only had a handgun in this kind of situation, but yeah. And let's see. I think the next thing might be that I'll go ahead and just finish up the flashbacks real quick. So yeah, Oliver shows up just in time, and love that he brought two guns. Throws one of them to Maseo, and they manage to stop the and really, really badass when he stops the car and Shinawin. And I think the very next thing might be that so he meets I don't know, I have a feeling this guy's going to be significant. Shriver, I think, was how he pronounced it. And he says, we're going to have to go back to China. But after that, you can go anywhere you want. Talk about burying the lead, dude. But I kind of love that. So there's what 2.5 seasons. Let's see, rest of 3, all of 4, all of 5, I think. For where he, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's like a standing off or if it's like we'll drop you off somewhere or what exactly, but it gives them flexibility as far as where he goes, because really the only thing is that no one can know that he's still alive. Other than that, they can do anything with, yeah. Manu Bennett kills it as usual, although in this case not a literal character, but his performance, his acting still kills it. Yeah, I think that does. So yeah, there's right. I'll also briefly do. So we have great cut from. So yeah, by then Thea drops flowers rather than scores at the grave, just like Tommy said. And it's also one of those things of like, we know that this didn't make her stop doing drugs, so this really underlines how much of a problem she had. Like, a dealer dies, I don't know, 20 feet from her, and she just keeps going. She really, really struggled before yeah. And I think that is yeah. And they do a great transition from those graves to Sarah's, and then Laurel has to tell Quentin that Mom already knows about Sarah, and just, yeah. And she points out, and yeah, and he says, he doesn't want her being Canary, and she points out, you told me that I was meant to do good, remember? And it's like, yeah, we saw it like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago in flashback. Of course we remember. And I think the next thing might be the I don't know. Has it been a while since I said Waller is awesome both in writing and performance? Waller is awesome in both writing and performance, and that's also a thing. If I don't say it every time she pops up, just please assume that is how I feel about it. And I think that is just about. Yeah, so they do manage to. Right. Also, really love that. Because he doesn't know about Thea's training, he wasn't really expecting her to put up that much of a fight, because they have been in conflict before, and yeah, they ultimately managed to get the upper hand, and he's trying to goad her into killing, because that would mean he won. He destroyed. And also, later he does say, how many people can Oliver Queen lose before he breaks? And yeah, ultimately it's just a flesh wound. And I do love that it cuts to black, to commercial originally, on the gunshot, so we don't see, and then when it's back, he just says, just a flesh wound. And yeah, once again, we don't need to see, because like obviously in between, yeah, in the middle of that cut, off screen, they took him back to the cell. They anesthetized him, if he asks nicely, removed the bullet, bandaged up the wound, locked the cell door. These are all things that we know. Like, yeah, this is Oliver is perfectly capable of doing these things. And yeah, I guess at this point, so is Thea. So it's simply not at all necessary to spend any time on it, so we can get right to the meat. And yeah, just let's see. I think I've pretty much said right. A little bit more about, so when they were back. Yeah, it was indeed, just as I guessed, and they pretty much hinted. It was only one episode of them gone from the city, Starling City. And yeah, they're talking about, well, I guess we are going to need Malcolm. And Malcolm's like, I agree. Again, I just want there to be an outtake where, they say, okay, so now that he can't hear us, we both agree Malcolm's a real doo-doo head. And he's like, hey. But, yeah, she says, I will be your soldier, but not your daughter. And, yeah, he sure can alienate his flesh and blood, can't he? I think that is almost everything about the episode. I just want to make absolutely sure, so I'm just going to mentally fast forward through the entire thing. Let's see. So I guess that is pretty much all. Right. Also the fact that let's see, we have the thing about, Laurel told me, well, I mean, she by accident, but and the thing about, does Laurel know? No, it's complicated. Yeah, you could say that. That is definitely a word for what this is. And I'm a tiny bit worried that the might tell Laurel. I mean, does Laurel have any secrets from Thea at this point? So it's this thing of like, how can I betray the trust of someone who, has told me everything? And yeah. I think, yeah, that feels like absolutely everything. Yeah, if there's something that you feel I should have commented on, drop a comment letting me know, and I will try to reply. Yeah. It was also very compelling. I think it's very early in the episode, the bit with, yeah, this is how the NU reminds me of who I really am. It's not like me to say sorry.